So the question was, are there any strategic adjustments you might make to the base gold medal squared system? So the quick answer is yes, but rarely. So we have the system that we like because it works in most cases. And in my opinion, coaches adjust too much. So when in doubt, stick with your system because that's what you're training your players every day in practice. That's what they know best. Now, to give more than the quick answer to the question, here are some adjustments that you may make. And so one of the most common that we get asked is, how about your defenders? What do you do with your defenders? We almost always keep that middle back defender in that middle position, about 20 feet back, about right in the middle of the court. And if we're going to adjust, usually we make those adjustments from the wing defenders. So your line defender, so it's your right back, if it's an outside, it's a hit on the other side. You may say, just stay up for the tip if you know you're seeing a lot of tips or this team is going to tip a lot. Or you may say, usually we had that defender somewhat deep and off the line. Maybe you play a hitter who can really hit the line. They can hit it right down the line. And in that case, just tell your line defender, hey, go over there and get on the line. So that's an example of making some adjustments from the wing defenders. Another example of an adjustment you might make is with your blocking system. Generally, we're in a bunch block system, so we got the left and right side blockers in a little tighter to the middle to help out with things coming in there. But you might play a team that sets really fast to the outside, and your right side blocker is getting beat. So in that case, you may want to spread your blockers out a little bit. If they're not setting much in the middle of the court and they're shooting it fast to the outside, hey, then spread your right side blocker out a little bit. That's something that we might do from time to time. So there's a couple of examples of how we might do it. Maybe a third example, and this is not really an in-match adjustment, but you may have a libero who is much better passer than your other passers. And normally we say we want to take the seam on the left, and so if your libero's passing the middle back and the ball is in the 1-6 seam between her and the right back, you might say let the right back passer take that. Well, maybe your libero is so good that you want her to pass both seams. And I've seen that in club volleyball and high school volleyball. That would not be uncommon to have one passer who is much better than your other passers, and then you might want to adjust from your system and not have it just taking one seam but taking both seams. Now, you also asked a little bit about club volleyball. We don't have much time to scout. We're not really preparing a scouting report. How can we do it? I think in club volleyball you have a little time to scout, and you probably don't have matches and matches of video that you're studying and a scouting report the night before like you might have in college or something like that. But a lot of the times, unless you're playing them for the first match of the day, you might have at least seen them play one match earlier in the day. And while your team probably doesn't have the ability to execute a complex scouting report and you don't have the data needed to put together a complex scouting report, the good thing is at the club level you don't need that, because generally club players, they don't have a ton of tricks in the bag. So they might have a tendency and they might only really have one shot that they go to. So even just being able to watch the other team for one match or part of a match, a lot of the times you can see some information there. The most important thing that you want to get when you're scouting in club volleyball is a serving target. And a lot of times you can pick that up pretty quickly. Even if you only get to see, again, a little bit of one match of that team before you play them, if you can pick out who you want to serve, that can really make 2, 3, 4 points difference when you go to play them. And also, I would say as a coach, have a couple of sort of standard serving strategies in your pocket anyway. Teams generally serve better when they have a strategy going into it and something to focus them. So even if you don't know anything about this team, you might say, let's start by serving their front row outside hitter. And then, as the game goes on, then you can make adjustments, because maybe you're serving two different players and you're going to see one is doing better than the other, and then you get after that other one. Or you might say, we want to serve to zone 1 a lot, because sometimes youth setters have trouble with the pass coming from zone 1 over their head and stuff like that. So to have a couple of these serving strategies sort of in your back pocket ready to go. And sometimes it's not so much scouting before you play, but it's start with this strategy, and as you're going in that first set, see how it's adjusting and see how it's going, and be ready to go based off that. Another thing that is helpful if you're scouting in club volleyball, you don't have a ton of time, but you can watch a little bit. Club teams tend to have one of two things with their middle attack. Either they never set the middle and they're only going to set their outside hitters, or they have a really good middle who they're going to set every single time they get a perfect pass. You generally don't see the balanced distribution in club volleyball. The setters are usually not that high level yet. So if you can just watch that a little bit, you might be able to tell your middle blocker some information about that. You might say, hey, they're almost never going to set their middle. Be ready to go side to side. And if they do set the middle, then you just react to it. You try to get your hands up on it. But maybe our back row is just going to try to dig as much of those balls as possible. Or you might say, this particular middle, they are going to set them every single time on a perfect pass. So just be all over them. And if they get a perfect pass and they set it to the outside and you get beat, it's not a big deal. But generally, club setters at 15 or 16 years old, they tend to fall into one of those two categories where they're either never going to set the middle, they're always going to set the middle. And a lot of times as a coach with your eye, you don't need the scouting report saying, oh, the 55% distribution to the outside and this distribution. A lot of times with your coaching eye, you can just watch that team and you can tell that this setter has no intention of setting the middle, or the setter's putting her back to the net, she's staring the middle right down, and she's going to set that middle every time she can on a perfect pass.